I'm getting into film photography lately. It's been an absolute pleasure to do because it's completely different from digital photography. It's like a whole new world. It's amazing. I want to help you guys how to get into film photography, what to look for as a beginner when shooting film, and how to not mess up your first film roll. My camera is a Canon AE1. I picked up this camera. This is a recommendation of 3 cameras: Canon AE1, Olympus OM1 or 2, Nikon D2 or D3. These were the most recommended, easy to find part, beginner friendly cameras. I bought this camera from eBay. Came with a 20A 2.8mm lens. This one is battery dependent. You have to look for, is your camera battery dependent or independent? After you check that, make sure to check what kind of battery does your camera accept, because every camera needs a different type of battery. For example, my Canon AE1 accepts this 4LR44 6-watt battery. I bought a ton of these. It was very cheap, but the battery actually doesn't drain too fast. Also, there's a button on the camera here where you can deactivate the battery when you don't use the camera. I don't know if that function is on every camera or only on the Canon AE1, but if you have a button to turn your camera off so the battery won't drain, definitely use that one. It's a good idea to always keep one battery in your bag. If your battery would drain, you can swap it immediately. Otherwise, some cameras work without a battery, even they are battery dependent, but some cameras like the Canon AE1 wouldn't work without the battery. So I always keep one battery in my bag in case it would drain. And where you buy from. You will only get to know your camera is good or not when you develop your first roll of film. So maybe if it has a problem, you won't know until you see the actual film. One thing to look for is this camera is a 35mm film camera. There's another format, 120 film camera format film. Those cameras are the medium format films, but this one is 35mm. Be mindful of that when you buy your first roll of film. If you buy 35mm camera, buy 35mm film. And if you want to buy medium format cameras, usually those cameras are much more expensive. 35mm is much more cheap. And of course you can buy color or black and white film. The first film roll I bought, the 200 ISO film, was around $25, and this current film in my camera was $29. This is a 400 ISO film, so I guess that's why it's a bit more expensive. And I found that when I checked the stores, the black and white film was a little bit cheaper than the colored version. I don't know if it's generally true. Maybe the black and white film, if you buy black and white, it's gonna be a bit more cheap. And there's another important thing to look for when you buy your first film roll. As I mentioned, this is a 35mm film camera. If you use this format, you have to buy 35mm film. But there are 2 other options to choose from, and that is how many shots you have in one roll. So there are 2 types of roll: 24 frames film roll and the 36 frame film roll. And of course the 24 is cheaper because it's less shots in one roll, but I found that the development price is actually the same because, you know, they have to do the same things just with less rolls, so it would make sense, but they have to do the same process. So I think 36 frame film roll is a better option to choose from, and also you don't have to change the film roll in your camera as often as you would do with a 24 frame film roll. The other thing is that there are certain number of ISOs in film: 200, 400, 800, 1600. My first one was a 200 film ISO, and currently in this one there's a 400 film ISO. You can buy any number of ISO, but you know, as you buy higher number of ISO film, the film becomes more grainy, and also you can have more light because this material is, the number means how sensitive the film is to light. 400 is more sensitive to light than the 200, so I can use different settings on the camera. The next thing I want to tell you about is load and unload the camera, and I won't show you in this video because it's currently loaded, and I don't want to open it, you know, because that would ruin the film. So maybe many people doesn't know, because some people don't use film cameras anymore and it's just a new thing, it's coming back. So when you load your film, you can load it anywhere, it doesn't have to be a dark room or something. You have to see these numbers are moving when you shoot your film, and this rewind knob also has to turn, otherwise you loaded it incorrectly. When you unload the film, it's very important to rewind back first, because if you open the back of your camera, you're just gonna ruin the whole film, and you don't want that. I want to say a huge thanks to my friend who got me into film photography. This is his book. This is from Japan. He shoots the streets of Japan. He shoots a Fujifilm X-T1 camera. It's a very wide sensor camera, so the film looks like this, very wide. Give it a go, order his book. Back into the video. The next thing I want to tell you about is, if you use a film camera, you have to measure light, because it's not like a digital camera. There are certain ways to measure light. In this camera there's a built-in light measure, but you can also use an external light measure. And there's the third option. There's an app called Light Meter. I also link this in the description. You can set the ISO, the f-stop and the shutter speed. This app tells you what kind of settings you have to use when you set your camera, and you can set according to what kind of shutter speed you want or f-stop you want. Measuring light is very important with these cameras. Another very important thing is when you want to shoot a nighttime picture or a road at nighttime with not much light. Best way to capture a scene like that is to use a tripod. Normally you would use a tripod even with a digital camera, but with a digital, you know, you have stabilization, but with these cameras it's completely manual. You don't have any stabilization, and even the smallest vibration is gonna ruin your picture. You have to use a tripod. It's definitely use a tripod. And if your camera has a built-in timer, make sure to use the timer. Push the button gently and just let it do its thing. If you push the button, the whole camera is just gonna vibrate and your picture is gonna be ruined. So guys, these were the tips I wanted to share with you from my own experience. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, please push the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. In the next video, we're gonna check out the pictures that I shot with this camera. It's still in development, but soon I'm gonna see what I shot, because I still don't know, and maybe they're gonna be terrible, but maybe not. We'll see. Stay tuned for that. I see you in the next video. See you guys. This camera I haven't mentioned, but came with dust in the viewfinder, but that doesn't bother the look of the final image, so all good. Thank you for still being here. If you're still here, that means you're a true fan. So I have something for you. I finished my website, done, ready, outside, running. I'm still working on it because it's not perfect yet. I already released it, so if you have 2 minutes, check it out and maybe subscribe to my newsletter so I can send you an email when I release a new video. Well, thanks for sticking around and watching my video. See you in the next one.